Cliff Jackson, and I invite you to our virtual service this morning. The in-person discussion group and worship services usually held in our building have been suspended until further notice. We will continue to hold discussion group at 9:15 a.m. and worship at 10:30 a.m. every Sunday via Zoom until it is safe to hold large group functions again in our building. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, we extend a special welcome to you. We invite you to stay on the Zoom meeting after the service concludes, when many in attendance enjoy a bit of conversation with each other. We would enjoy meeting you if you would like to introduce yourself. We also invite you to see our website at uuormond.info and look for the welcome button under the picture of our minister, Reverend Kathy. There you will find how to get further connected with our congregation and learn more about Unitarian Universalism. Now, on to announcements for the good of our community. Our building remains closed to most activities. If you must be in the building, a mask is required. Please practice social distancing and keep surfaces clean. A hand sanitizer dispenser is in the kitchen. Please remember to schedule all events through our administrator, Kathy Jackson. Wednesday, March 3rd at 4 p.m., as part of our racial justice program, Dan Gribben will facilitate a discussion of the novel Purple Hibiscus by Chimanananda Ngozi Adichie. Zoom link will be emailed the day prior. Stay up to date by reading the e-news, which arrives in your inbox by Friday each week, and the latest issue of the monthly Jotter. A special announcement. Until Easter, the Alliance is collecting food items in the UUCOB parking lot on Saturdays from 11 to 11 a.m., and raising money for the Jerry Doliner Food Bank. The Alliance Treasurer, Linda Kalajian, extends many thanks for your generous contributions to date. She reports that the Alliance has received $1,450 for the Doliner Food Bank. The Alliance goal is to raise a total of $2,000, so donations are still being accepted. If the Alliance raises $2,000, it will become $4,000, as it will be matched by anonymous donors at Doliner. If you have not contributed, this is a great opportunity to do so. Please send a check made out to UUCOB Alliance in care of Linda Kalajian. Her address is in the directory. In the absence of a physical passing of the offering basket at this time, we appreciate your continued financial support by mailing pledge payments to UUCOB. The donation button on our website has been temporarily disabled. After the service, Ludi Goodson will explain how smaller donations to UUCOB can be made through our new website.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
At the sound of the chime, our service begins.
This morning I have an introduction to the prelude. These are the words of David Lanz, composer of our prelude this morning. He says, during one Christmas holiday, the images of homeless families constantly filled my mind. I kept wondering how a homeless child must feel during that time of year, and I began to imagine what such a child's dreams must be like. Because they are children, I trusted that the sad images could be buffered by images of hope. This was my only consolation. Thank you to Janet Strumpus for this selection of music and for the gifts of your music. Our call to worship this morning, the words of Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential. For alone, our vision is too narrow to see all that must be done, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed.
I invite you to light a chalice at home if you have one nearby. I light this chalice, a single flame which I hope kindles many hearts this morning. Let this flame unite us in virtual community and remind us of each other's presence as we worship from many singular rooms. Let this flame inspire in us faith and courage to face these difficult times. Let this flame be our guide in making sense of a chaotic world, and let its light show us the way to beloved community, both near and far. Our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our aim. To dwell together in peace and freedom, to seek the truth, and to help one another, these are our goals.
Our joys and concerns this morning. Barbara Sandberg wishes to share the sad news about John Lynch. She says that folks might remember him when he attended our congregation. He would like to get up and dance in the aisles, Barbara says. You will notice on that his memorial service is today. And should you decide to attend, please give Marilyn a call to tell her that you will be attending. And a joy this morning from the Alliance, who wishes to thank all who dropped food donations over the last few weeks in our parking lot, our UUCOB parking lot. This is a picture of Helen Casoli's trunk, the result of the Alliance food drive yesterday. Helen says that Rebecca's trunk is full too. I'm just sure that the beer box here is just a box for storage, and we're not collecting beer for the food drive. The food drive does continue. Collect your non-perishables and drop them in the parking lot next Saturday, March the 6th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And be sure to take advantage of the matching funds by making a cash donation also to the Alliance for the Dahliner Food Bank. For all of the joys and concerns which remain on our hearts this morning, will you pray with me? Spirit of life, help us to be present with all that is our life, both our deepest sorrows and our greatest joys, so that we can truly live, engaging fully in our own life and in our community. Spirit of community, help us know how linked we are, how each one of our cares touches us all. Help us to ask for support when we are in need and offer our support to others when we are able, so that we may rest in the solace of one another's love. Spirit of life, help us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, so that we might fully embody love and resist hatred. Spirit of resistance, help us to stick up for what is right, even when we are tired and afraid. Help us to dream of the world as it should be and act to bring about the world as it should be. Help us to find hope each day. Spirit of hope, help us through this day and each day. Help us to be present for all that is our life. For all this we pray, Amen and blessed be. Those the words of Liz Weber. And our musical interlude, Spirit of Life. Sing along, there is an introduction. A young man, the custodial parent of two young daughters, moves to a motel within a walking distance of his workplace because he is behind on his rent and he can't afford to get his car repaired. He will never catch his breath financially, and his daughters are at risk living in a transient community. Only with the help of a former teacher who is spending her days researching subsidized housing options does he have hope of escaping a life ever on the edge of personal disaster. A retired military veteran and his spouse must vacate their home because their landlord is selling the residence. They have a place to stay temporarily, but try as they might, they cannot find proper housing at a price he can afford on his fixed income. The stress puts him at risk as a sufferer of PTSD. A single mother of 5 has an argument with her oldest son, who is developmentally delayed and autistic. He quickly becomes loud and disrespectful to his mother. A younger teen son tries to intervene and bloodies his older brother's nose by accident. Mom takes the injured son to the hospital for treatment. At the hospital, a police officer takes a statement. Before the mother and injured son can return from the hospital, the officer arrives at the home and arrests the younger son. He is charged with aggravated battery with bodily harm, a misdemeanor in Florida. Mother and son make 3 court appearances before the charges are dropped. However, the arrest stays on her son's record, which he must explain at every job interview now, 3 years after the incident. These are stories from folks who are members of the congregations, which are members of the faith organization. They are but a few of the thousands of similar stories across Volusia County of people who are at risk because of an unhealthy economy and draconian laws which rob people of their dignity, their health, and their ability to earn a living. Faith stands for fighting against injustice toward harmony. Faith is a community organizing 501(c) nonprofit founded 20 years ago by our congregation, along with some 30 other churches and places of worship across Volusia County. Faith operates on the notion that religious institutions and their people are called to demand justice for the marginalized and the voiceless in our communities. Faith seeks to find the root cause of community problems, usually the result of unjust or unfair systems. Faith then researches the problems to find solutions that city and county officials can implement to solve community problems. Many people in our congregation have engaged in the work of faith over these 20 years. I became co-chair of faith only 3 years ago, but I have learned a great deal about what community organizing is and how vital it is in giving voice to the voiceless in Volusia County. Most profoundly, I have seen where the community problems of excessive youth arrests and concerns for our in-school arrests and out-of-school suspensions revealed that in our own backyard of Volusia County, we had one of the most robust school to prison pipelines in the state. And Florida ranks among the worst in the nation. Since that time, a little over 3 years ago, Faith's Youth Criminal Justice Committee has worked diligently to win commitments from Sheriff Chitwood and city law enforcement agencies across the country to increase the use of civil citations when youth are arrested for misdemeanor offenses. Civil citations avert an arrest record and require restitution, and the child participates in a restorative justice program. In addition to Faith's request for increased civil citation use among Volusia law enforcement agencies, Faith asked the state attorney, R.J. Larissa, to shore up the inconsistencies of civil citation use between law enforcement agencies and including the local Department of Juvenile Justice. In 2018, Larissa did this by issuing a memorandum of understanding, which all concerns agreed to. Now, hand in hand with law enforcement and civil citations goes restorative practices. The Youth Committee has also worked in earnest to get Volusia County School Board to implement restorative practices as an alternative to the more punitive policies of the past, especially out of school suspensions, which contribute greatly to dropout rates. 2 years ago, we in Faith enjoyed a big win when the school board agreed to implement restorative practices at all grade levels by 2024. And teachers and administrators report that they are happy with the new program, and the success is apparent as already suspensions have dropped 50% in high schools and 30% in middle schools. Unlike restorative practices, though, the increased use of civil citations to avert youth arrests that Sheriff Chitwood and former Daytona Beach Police Chief Craig Capri committed to in 2018 has not materialized. They promised 80% civil citation issuance, and instead they are around an abysmal 30%. Children in Volusia County are still being arrested without diversion and receiving permanent arrest records, despite the fact that often the charges are later dropped. In 2020, of the 7 children 11 years old or younger that were arrested, of those 7 11-year-olds or younger, only 2 received civil citations. Of the 18 children arrested who were 12 years old, only 6 received civil citations. And of the 30 children arrested who were 13 years old, only half received civil citations. Of the overall 31 children arrested by Daytona Beach Police, only 1 received a civil citation in 2020. A significant factor in whether a child receives a civil citation seems to be when the arresting officer deems that domestic abuse is involved. Sheriff Chitwood and Department of Juvenile Justice Supervisor Carla Kwan, who seems to be a factor in this low diversion rate, Chitwood and Kwan feel strongly that there should be no exceptions, even when the abuse amounts to nothing more than a push or a shove or a bloody nose between brothers. I can tell you that on that basis of a push or a shove or a finger pointing or hands-on between parent and child, I can tell you on that basis, there was a time or two in my past, in my household, that if Volusia County Police had been involved, there would have been an arrest. I'm in total sympathy with the single mother of 5. For now, Faith has decided to agree to disagree with the sheriff and Carla Kwan on the domestic abuse factor. Our best hope is for State Attorney R.J. Larizza's office to step in and review each youth arrest to determine if diversion from the clerk of the court is possible, because after the arrest goes to the clerk of the court, it is a permanent record, and it only requires a level 2 search in order to surface it. And often those level 2 searches are related to things like nursing schools and being first responders. So if a child makes a mistake at 11 years old or 13 years old and they are arrested without diversion, then they may not be able to pursue a dream. Faith hopes that Mr. Larizza will attend the Nehemiah Action Assembly on March 22nd so that we can ask for commitments from him to oversee the use of civil citations to divert youth arrests in Volusia County. Before my time at our congregation, you were doing the work of faith by asking the county to build a homeless shelter for single adults. Because faith is oriented to solving community problems, it was important that the shelter help its guests escape the cycle of homelessness by getting them connected with services like Social Security and food stamps, in addition to helping them get clean and sober, teaching them life skills, and helping them find jobs. Faith's ask of this kind of a homeless shelter was ambitious, but our persistence paid off. In December of 2019, the First Step shelter opened its doors. Since that time, the shelter has provided services to over 100 people, with 18 of them making it to housing. While this may seem like a small number of people served, it's actually not bad, as most of 2020, the shelter had been very limited in capacity due to COVID precautions. What is more, the path to housing is challenging to people who are homeless because of mental illness and chemical addiction. Many leave the shelter before completing the program because they are not able to comply with the rules or participate in the skills training. But there is no doubt in my mind that in years to come, First Step Shelter will serve many more homeless people. They will save lives just simply by accommodating them. And they will change lives by putting them on the path to being homed. First Step represents a huge accomplishment toward improving the quality of life for the most marginalized and forgotten people in our community. Sometimes faith does move mountains. Now, having no income or suffering mental illness or chemical addiction are not the only reasons for being homeless, as evidenced by the retired veteran and his wife. They are homeless because they can't find affordable housing after their landlord sold their residence. In 2019, the cost of housing emerged as a community problem. And the research which followed revealed startling statistics. To afford a one-bedroom apartment in Volusia County, someone working full-time would have to make over $16 an hour. Yet, the mean renter wage, or the average renter wage in Volusia County, is $13 an hour. As the cost of rent has drastically increased, wages have not kept up. And this is evident by how difficult it is to raise minimum wage up to the $15 an hour rate that it should be to keep up with inflation and the cost of living, especially here in Volusia. As the cost of rent has drastically increased, wages have not kept up. In fact, 1 in 3 renter households in our area are severely cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 50% of their monthly income on rent. Volusia's rate of severe cost burden is higher than both New York City and the San Francisco metro area. That's a little bit hard to believe. Volusia County is some 16,000 units short of affordable rental housing. People wait years on waiting lists for subsidized housing. Unfortunately, there's little financial incentive for developers to build housing that would be affordable for working families. It's simply not profitable enough. And therefore, the development of affordable housing is dependent on outside subsidies and incentives. And in the research process, Faith discovered over 700 communities nationwide that have experienced remarkable success with local affordable housing trust funds. Thus, this time last year, Faith asked the county council to create such a fund, but only 3 of the 7 council members said yes to the ask. This year, however, promises to be better. Faith met with the new chair of the county council, Jeff Brower, who seemed amenable to at least look at the possibility of funding sources for an affordable housing trust fund. Of course, he doesn't want to raise taxes. Faith suggested to him that linkage fees might be a viable source. Linkage fees are like developer impact fees. For example, if a company wants to develop a retail area or build a large distribution center at which mostly low-wage workers will be employed, that company would pay a fee based on the square footage of space built. This way, the company pays into a housing trust fund that would ensure affordable workforce housing is available to its employees. Linkage fees provide a much more economically healthy approach to funding, which avoids putting low-wage workers in the impossible predicament of severely cost-burdened living. At the Nehemiah Action Assembly on March 22nd, Faith will likely ask the County Council to partner with Volusia Cities in commissioning a nexus study, which is a necessary step in pursuing linkage fees to fund affordable housing. Youth criminal justice and housing continued to be the work of Faith. It's amazing what we've accomplished this year despite COVID. We've gathered virtually for our house meeting in our congregation. We met on Zoom for the Community Problems Assembly, for research, for meeting with experts and civic officials. We've met on Zoom for team meetings and Justice Ministry Network meetings. The work of Faith continues. Faith doesn't go away. We persist in the work of justice. Now, let us turn to the question of how does our work of faith build beloved community? Well, remember that first of all, beloved community, at the center of beloved community is relationship. And it is a relationship of care. It is a relationship of right relations. Through our work of faith, we give voice to the beleaguered mother of 5 whose young son is now saddled with an arrest record when he could have received a civil citation and participated in a restorative justice program. We care about this mother and her son. We build beloved community by giving voice to a retired military veteran who should be able to live on a pension he earned from his service to our country, but can't because the gap between average income and the cost of living in Volusia has widened by an unhealthy and nearly irreparable margin. We build beloved community by giving hope and opportunity to the younger generations in our community who struggle mightily just to break even in their living. We build beloved community by engaging justice, equity, and compassion in our human relations. That is our number 2 principle. We do this through faith by bringing about change in systems in Volusia that are unjust. The lack of affordable and workforce housing is an aspect of our county infrastructure that is unjust. The injustice has come about in part by the county council's neglect of the working poor and by failing to collect the cost of doing business in Volusia. In other words, failing to collect impact fees from developers. Faith is working to change that pattern. And finally, we build beloved community by protecting the future of the children of our county, by disrupting the school to prison pipeline, by dramatically reducing their out of school suspension and dramatically increasing their chance of staying in school. And folks, I can see no reason in the world to arrest an 11-year-old or possibly a child even younger for a misdemeanor. Those 5 young children arrested in our county last year should have received help, not punishment. The tragedy here is that those 5 children arrested learn only that they have been criminalized for making a mistake and did not have the opportunity to learn, to make amends, to make restoration. And they did not learn how to behave differently in the future. We are building beloved community in this county through our work of faith. And the best way that you and I can participate in that work broadly is to show up for justice tomorrow night, March the 1st at 6:30 p.m. for the Faith Rally, which will prepare us for the most important event of the year for faith, which is the Nehemiah Action Assembly on March 22nd. So folks, I encourage you to attend the Faith Rally tomorrow night. Very simple. All you have to do is go to the Faith website, and there will be a button on that, right on the page that opens up for you, and it'll say Rally. You just click that button. It's going to ask you for your name and some other information. You don't really need to give more than your name. Be sure and say that you're from the Unitarian Universalist congregation, and be present. And then, most of all, you will be asked by a group in our congregation who are Justice Ministry Network members. You will be asked to join them in attending the Nehemiah Action Assembly on March 22nd, Monday, 6:30 p.m. There are 2 ways to attend. One will be virtually, and again, it will be the same thing. You will just go to the Faith website, and there will be a button on there for you to click to get connected. The other, if you are willing and able, is to show up at the drive-in church in South Daytona Beach in your car. And of course, if you want to share a ride, that is completely up to you. Some of you have so-called pods of friends, which you practice being safe in these COVID times, and that you're comfortable being safe with each other. So you can show up in pods or alone in your car. If you do want to some help with coordinating being at the drive-in in a car, contact me. We are doing the work of building beloved community through faith. At the core of our theology, our Unitarian Universalist theology, is a theology of care, which I will talk about more next week, and talk about how there are other ways in which our congregation is doing this work of building beloved community and taking care of each other. And it is drawing us some attention. So I will close now and thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of the work that you do for faith and for making our community a better place for everyone to live. So may it be. Our anthem, Make Them Hear You, by Dan Kerr, performed by Dan Kerr. This is a wonderful performance by Dan, and I think it says everything about the work that we're doing with faith.
Go out and tell our story Let it echo far and wide. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. How justice is our battle, and how justice was denied. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles that are more than black and white. And I could not put down my sword, for justice was my right. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Go out and tell our story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And tell them in our struggle we were not the only ones. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword can be a sermon or the power of the pen. Teach every child to raise their voice, and then, my people, then will justice be demanded by 10 million righteous men. Make them hear you. When they hear you, I'll be near you.
Thank you, Dan and Janet Strumpus, for an excellent accompaniment.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our benediction, the words of Kathy Huff. Our time in this place may have ended, but our connection to each other and this community remains. Together, may we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, live the selfless deed, trod gently upon the earth, and fill the world with compassion. Until we meet again, blessed be.
Our postlude is Lift Every Voice by James Weldon Johnson and J. Rosamond Johnson, arranged by John Carter, performed by Janet Strumpus, and recorded by Felix Fernandez.
This concludes our worship service.